Hi, good morning, Iconoclast fellows. Um, I'm Holly. You might remember me from the beginning of the year, and I am going to talk to you guys through a series of videos about our SEL or socio emotional learning curriculum and why we're bothering with it. I know this is long overdue, and here we are in the middle of the year, and I'm going to start back at the beginning with some of the principles of why we're incorporating this component into Iconoclast. Um, so today, I'd like to start with a brief overview of the science, why the science is helping us understand why breath and mindfulness is an important component of brain development and also recovery and resilience. So to start at the beginning, I want to talk about mindfulness in our culture. We are probably pretty aware that things like meditation, yoga, the word mindfulness, even t-shirts supporting uh, uh, the idea, like things with the Buddha on it, or things with namaste on it, or peace, love, etc. These things are in our culture right now. And I can't help but think that it's because some part of us knows we need to be paying attention to it, even if it is being brought to us through commercialism and capitalism. So here we are, paying attention to some of these things that keep showing up. Um, they say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. So here we are trying to go, okay, the same thing's showing up in our view. Let's pause, pay attention, and see what there is to it. So without further ado, I'm going to start by saying what mindfulness is useful for. We understand now through so much research that it's an important practice to help reduce disease, addiction, obsessive compulsive disorders, neuroses. It can even be useful to help offset the impact of harsh drugs on the body, things like HIV treatment and cancer treatment. So with all of that, we think, why can't it also be useful to help shape the brain, to help the brain to form in more deliberate and noticing ways? So why wait till we have a crisis to introduce mindfulness? Why not introduce it before these things set in? And with some of the kids that we work with, we know that their lives are already full of trauma. We know that their lives have already been interrupted by crisis. So we are introducing a practice, both in the classroom and in the process of making art, that can help them pause, reset, and notice their own selves, their own experience. I'm going to give you a definition of mindfulness. It is simply the practice of paying attention on purpose. So deliberate attention to something. What does my hat feel like on my head? I'm noticing that it's a little tighter than I might like. What do my shoes feel like on my feet? What does my sweatshirt feel like on my skin? Is it soft? Is it scratchy? And then moving inward, what does my breath feel like as I sit here? Does it feel shallow? Does it feel deep? Is my stomach rumbling? Is it anxious? Is it settled? Does my back hurt? Am I straight? Am I ready? So these are the ways that we can turn attention to ourselves, both on the outside and on the inside. That's how mindfulness can be of use to us in a sort of 360 view, if you will. So more scientifically, mindfulness is defined as the self-regulation of attention with an attitude toward openness. So intentionally focusing our attention when our brain gets hijacked or before our brain gets hijacked. Why does our brain get hijacked? So our brain forms in both in the womb and in life from the back to the front. The brain stem, the back of our brain, and I'll insert a picture here, is our sort of most basic primitive brain. It's the part of our brain that responds to things like the saber-toothed tiger in early man, right? We had to know whether to fight, flight or freeze. And that sort of impulsive, instinctual reaction in our brain help us to make a decision without having to think about it. Today in our world, we still have sort of saber-toothed tigers, right? Traffic, an oncoming car, a pedestrian crossing in front of us, dangers in our life that might have us to make a quick snap decision. But the saber-toothed tiger is a little bit different, right? It's a lot of stressors, and there's definitely trauma in many of our lives. But how can we sort of move from that instinctual flight, fight, freeze to a more deliberate paying attention so that we're not set into autopilot? We're not running, freezing, or freezing. I'm sorry, fighting before we have a moment to pause. So as our brain develops, we come here to this sort of like central part of our brain, which is known to be kind of our messenger system. It helps to regulate and send incoming input and outgoing information to the right places. So it's also the seat of our emotions. And during adolescence, many of us are working with adolescents right now. This part of our brain, the amygdala, the limbic system, is like on fire. It's producing hormones. It's producing neurotransmitters at 3 times the rate of a normal adult brain. So that means like their brain is just pulsing with this kind of emotional processing center, with this very kind of raw perception of the world. If we think about ourselves as teenagers and the sort of quip of, "You don't understand me." The truth is that many adults don't understand teenagers because we aren't there anymore. Our brains are not pulsing at that rate that a teenager's is. So then the last part to sort of develop is what we call the prefrontal cortex. Can't see it because I'm wearing my Astros hat, but the prefrontal cortex is our center for higher thought, our center for morality, our center for being able to make good or bad decisions based on higher executive functioning. And this part of our brain is not fully developed until we are well into our 20s. So you can imagine that the teenagers we work with, they don't yet have this higher capacity to stop, pause, and go, let me really think about the implications of my decisions and whether or not it's the right one for me. Most teenagers are just acting. They're just acting on that impulse, right? A little more evolved than just fight, flight, or freeze, but still acting on that emotional impulse. What we can do as practitioners, as educators, as mentors, is help them to just pause, think for a minute, connect with their bodies, connect with their breath, and realize that in any given moment, they do have a choice about how they respond. So like anything, whether we play the piano, whether we write, whether we make art, or a professional baseball player, we have to practice to become really good at that thing that we do. The same thing with paying attention. In art and writing, we are teaching kids to pay attention to their environment in a different way. It is my belief that art is in and of itself a mindful practice because it touches something deep at a core level that many people who don't practice as sort of intentional creative activity, they don't have access to. So bravo to you guys, to Iconoclast, for teaching this pause, this tool, and really growing it in our kids at an early age. I will say that for having been an artist and having access to art lessons since I was 8 years old is such a gift to me. And I've said many times, I think it saved my life, different times of my life. So one quick thing I'd like for you guys to walk away with is just breathe. If this week, from this video, you can just turn your attention towards your breath and then help the kids you are working with turn their attention towards their breath. then you will have done one small step towards noticing not just the outer world, but the inner sensations. One thing you can do, and there's a cardiologist, Dr. Andrew Weir, who has said that he teaches this first and foremost to his patients to help them calm the heart, slow the heart. He said it's the best path to recovery, better than any drug that he can come up with. It's called 4-7-8 breathing. I'll demonstrate it, and you can utilize it in your own day. You can also teach it to your students. 4-7-8 breathing is essentially breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 7 seconds, and then releasing for 8 seconds. These are not Mississippi seconds. They're just a quick 1, 2, 3, 4, so more like rhythm seconds. I'll demonstrate. I'm going to repeat. Dr. Weir believes that if we practice that 3 times a day in sets of 2 or 3, that it can literally change our body and change our brain. This is backed by scientific proof. If we can pause, breathe, and pay attention on purpose, then we are automatically pressing a reset button. I don't know how many of you guys are old enough to remember having to record on cassettes from the radio when your favorite song came on, but I remember sitting on Saturdays in the Top 40 countdown with my finger on the play and record button, always poised, waiting for it. So I was always trying to measure up to that very first second of the song so I didn't miss a single beat. But what I think to notice from that practice was the pause. The pause that was inherent in that activity of listening for my favorite song. The pause. So the word for the week is pause and breathe. I hope you guys have a great one, and I'll look forward to giving you another video soon. Thanks.